Hello!
Hello!
Welcome to Scottish Indie Gamers, Episode 1, Embrace the Margin.
Later on we're going to be talking about what an indie game is and isn't.
But first, some news and announcements. As we film this, IndieCon is going on in Dawson. It's a convention celebrating everything in independent role-playing games. We didn't manage to make it down this year because Dawson's quite far away, but we hope to see you guys next year and hope you all have fun.
Speaking of cons, Compulsion is on in Edinburgh, which is slightly closer to us, from the 25th to the 27th of March. The pre-booking is now open and it's £8 for a day and £13 for the weekend. A bargain.
Also in gaming news, Nathan Russell, who blogs on perilplanet.com, has started Naga Demon, the National Game Design Month. It's sort of like a NaNoWriMo but for game developers, and that's going on all through the month of November, so you should get involved with that if you're not already.
In sadder news, kittens and puppies die, and Shotgun and Grapple podcast are no more. They say they can't continue because of time constraints, but we have footage that suggests otherwise.
I'm Keith,
I'm Dasha.
I'm Alex.
and today our topic is what is actually an indie game. There are loads of people who will give us shit for this.
Right.
Okay, right off the bat, as soon as this goes on the internet, because there are loads of people who have a different viewpoint on what an indie game is. Okay,
Sure.
so I think where we start is we'll list off maybe a definition of what some people think of as an indie game.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it's obviously a game played by indie gamers.
Yeah. Okay, let's...
what's an indie gamer?
Yeah, someone who plays indie games. It's a very straightforward set of definitions. I don't see why we're having a whole discussion about this.
Those are interesting comments you have, Alex.
Sure.
But you're wrong.
Okay, explain how I'm wrong, Keith.
Sure thing, Alex.
Go. Firstly, it's a completely circular definition.
it's a
You should have
circular-
got that one
yeah, I was
right
going
after
to.
that.
I was going to.
Okay, I'm sure you were.
Circular definition that
Right.
doesn't actually tell us anything
Okay.
about the games being played.
Right.
It doesn't tell us anything about the gamers that are playing the games.
Okay.
And also, who's to say the guys playing the games that are indie aren't playing the games that are non-indie?
Ah. So you're saying that there's some sort of like
It's maybe just gamers.
some sort of hybrid gamer, some sort of abomination to nature that plays both kinds of game, indie and not indie.
You
What's
mean
not
like-
indie? There's no word for that. Is it trad? We're not sure if it's trad. Might be trad.
Might be trad.
Could be trad.
Okay, so what is an indie game? Some people will say it is story games.
Yeah, a lot of people would say that. I
Okay.
think.
What would you define as a story game?
That's a very good question. Keith, how would you define a story game?
Well, Alex, seeing as we're talking like an instructional video, I'd like to take that question you fielded.
Please do.
Story game. Story game is a game where rather than just playing a role, okay, like mainstream roleplay game is you create a character and then play that character. The focus is actually on the whole story and creating a narrative as a group.
So it's not a role-playing game.
It can be.
Doesn't have to be.
It can involve role playing.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to. The main focus of the game is telling a whole story. And usually
Okay.
that'll have a focus. It won't just be, let's sit down and make up a story and then people start going, and there were fish flying through there and there was, well, they could do it that way. Yeah, fish flying through there and my hero vanquishes them with a sword. There's usually some mechanic
So
that
it's
makes
not-
it a game.
It's not freeform either.
No, it's not freeform. Yeah, that's the one.
So your mechanic is, you've got mechanics and they address your story premise, your themes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that's where I would go with a story game.
But it seems like a lot of
Yeah.
people on sorry.
No, it makes it perfectly clear.
But it seems like a lot of people on sort of say storygames.com or on RPGNet would say that, I mean that will be the definition of an indie game. I guess maybe that's because there's a lot of crossover there.
I don't know. I would say there's probably a lot less of that on story games.
Okay.
I would say in the general pool there's going to be a lot of misconception a lot of muddy waters because Forge Games.
Okay,
Forge Games being used as a term, kicked about,
that's true.
and interchangeably with indie games.
So we should probably mention
Okay.
why the Forge is important, though.
Yeah. What is the Forge?
So it's a
Ash's job today is to ask what is.
I'm just one big question mark.
Are you sure?
well, I'll let you take that question there.
Why? I barely spend any time on the Forge. I go on there occasionally read stuff.
Okay.
You posted there,
I've never posted there.
haven't you?
I deny these accusations.
Okay. Like that.
Yep.
Okay, Forge. Forge was a web forum,
Mhm.
meeting place for games designers to come together, put together by some independent games designers and developers.
I do recall the URL of the Forge, the domain of the Forge custom was indierpgs.com.
Yeah.
So there's a very clear kind of association there between indiness and forgeness, I think.
Okay, yes. But
But they're not the same thing.
yeah, I don't think there were games being independently produced before there was the Forge,
Okay.
and there are independently created games now that the people possibly have no direct knowledge of the Forge.
Okay. That surprises me actually, because I would have generally assumed that most of the indie game writers now would at least be aware of what the Forge was, or be aware of what
I
it is.
think it would be rare, but
Okay.
I can see it as a possibility. I don't know for sure.
But okay, so you mentioned...
I don't have a stock of games designers that I'm talking with that just keeping them ignorant of the Forge in my background.
Okay,
That's
Well-
not going on.
we'll gloss over that. You did mention independently created, independently produced games though. So
Yeah.
how would you define that?
As in, I come up with an idea,
Mm.
I go out and I put some money on the table to get it made,
Mhm.
and we'll come back to that money on the table getting it made
Okay.
as to why indie games have become important.
Okay.
But I've basically came up with an idea, or me and a couple of mates have came up with an idea. We've pulled in enough money to get it made,
Mhm.
and we control the content we're throwing out there.
But surely that's no different from what Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson did in the 70s.
No, it's not.
Okay.
But the things that came after them changed the way that's viewed. The difficulty was that bringing back the money on the table.
Mhm.
Okay, is that to get originally it was spawned out of wargaming, and so they just sort of followed the same models and routes that were being used at the time, and then these have became, because they weren't selling a cubic fuck ton of models alongside them.
Sure.
The sort of business models for how to become successful with gaming, roleplay gaming, had changed. That you would have to sort of either have a big distributor that will get your game from you writing it and getting a physical copy made to a shop where someone can buy it, because that was the only way to get out. There's no internet. Mail order meant advertising, which meant money.
Mhm.
So whatever you were
And
doing,
not really at that stage much of a gaming press to advertise in outside of those. Sort of,
Yeah.
Well, what kind of era are we talking about here historically?
I'm probably, for myself, going from the spawning, like when D&D basically became TSR.
Right.
So we're talking TSR as a company.
I don't know when that actually was.
I'd have to check that exact date there.
Okay. So what you're saying is we don't know.
I'm saying I can't be exact in my dates, and
Okay.
of course you never want to put a date out on the internet without.
The internet pedants will actually roast you.
Yeah,
alive.
I'll say one date, and someone will come back going, oh, actually.
Let's ignore that for now.
Yeah. But okay, so you've got company.
The only important